It was the winter of 1958, month of November. It already started turning cold and winter was starting to set in the cold fields. Wind would howl back then when winter was setting in, making the wind chill almost unbearable in the backwoods near the banks of the Tug Fork of the Big Sandy River. Me and my family had occupied that land since the Civil War times. It had passed down to about 4 generations. But we were proud of our country heritage and proud to be on the land we or our forefathers had settled. My dad was a hard worker during those years. I guess everybody was, or it seemed to me it was. I never hardly got to see him very much, except for on weekends or through the time that the 6 o'clock news was being played on TV. We'd get a grand total probably of 2 or 3 channels sometimes on TVs back then, and everything was black and white. Wasn't any color TV. Somewhat a difference compared to now. But times was hard. People had to live hard back then. My daddy was a coal miner, and he worked for the Island Creek Coal Company. We lived in an old house on the banks of the river, and it was on the border of Kentucky and West Virginia, a little community called W.Va. Dad used to say, 4 o'clock comes early, son, it's everybody get in bed. I guess it did come early for him. He had to be on the job about 6 something and had to go a 20-mile trip. The roads wasn't very good at all, and you had to either go across the river on a swinging bridge, what they used to have then, or cross it in a boat to get to where he kept his truck. Kept his truck in West Virginia, and we lived in Kentucky. That was how far we were out in the woods, in the country. All right, and anyway, I thought I'd share a little bit of this with you today. I'm not going to hold you too long with it, okay? All right, remember my mother then, she'd wake every morning to get Daddy off to work and fix breakfast, making Dad's dinner and so forth, you know. And every morning I would awake to the sound of my mother in the kitchen making breakfast. You know, it was hot biscuits and gravy and coffee every morning back then. And I can still smell the bacon frying in the pan. Dad at some point would be using a poker and punching in the fireplace or the stove, a cook stove or whatever, adding wood or coal, and Mom would say he was making a mess on the rugs. Dad would yell and say, well, I've got to get the fire stirred up, dang it. Well, that was the last of that. Dad was a quiet man, you know. He didn't like being argued at. And we had this suspended footbridge, like I've mentioned before. They used to call a swinging bridge back then. It was hooked with cables. Big piers was poured in both sides of the on both sides of the river, one on the Kentucky side and one on West Virginia, and they poured big heavy piers and hooked these large cables across and pulled up what slack they could get out of them. And then they wired it up and put a wood floor in it, and that's what people, when it got access from one side of the river to the other on. Ours was a couple 100 feet long, so it's pretty good size, and had some big piers to hold it. But anyway, just some things I was thinking about, and I was thinking about how that Dad kept his truck parked on the West Virginia, and we lived in Kentucky. What I thought that was, because there's no road accessible on the Kentucky side of that river where we lived. It was out in the sticks. I remember being in my dad's old truck. I think it may have been a 40-something model, and the floorboard was starting to rust out. You could see the ground. See the ground too. If you from time to time, you could feel a draft in that old truck. And I remember when I was a small boy being in the truck when it crossed the river, when the water was low in the shoals in different places. You could do it then. Yeah, times is really different, isn't it? All right, let me tell you a few more things, and then I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna hold you too long. I hope you find this interesting. Daddy would work all week in the mines, and he worked hard. He was a union coal miner, worked in the deep mines around what they call a buggy, and he really enjoyed when the weekends would come around, and he could relax a little bit. But he must have thought resting meant working. It seemed that way to me. And it was a hoe and a rake or something, or plowing. It was his type of resting. Well, at least from spring through the fall, it seemed that there's always something need to be done. There's like 500 acres of property all down the south, and had gardens with all different things growing, corn fields. It was the corn would grow so tall that you get in a cornfield, and if you didn't know exactly where you was at, or watch how you went in and watch what you was doing, you get lost in the cornfield because it grew that tall. This type topsoil bottomland that was down next, not too far from the river, was some of the best topsoil that you ever could think of. And you could grow anything just about in it. It's a wonderful place to grow stuff. And that's where we were at, right in the middle of that. Well, anyhow, we had strawberries, and my mother would always enter this every year when they had the fair. The county fair would come in. She'd enter some type of vegetables of some kind or something in it. And I remember one time her entering a cabbage head. It weighed 16 pounds. A cabbage head. It filled a tub. It filled up a tub. It was so big. And she won a blue ribbon. My mom. Thought about all them old places and old houses. All of them's gone. My mother's still now. She's way up in age. But my dad's been gone a lot of years. He was 10 years older than my mother. He was born in 1915. His dad was born 11 years after the Civil War. Thought about things. How just, here I am. I'm in my 50s. And I remember talking to someone that was born before the Civil War. Just something to think about. I talked to somebody one time that was born in 1849. Just something that you can think about. I think about this stuff. See, remember when I was a boy, I remember seeing people with cars drive cars out onto the ice of the river. The winters was so much different then than they are now. And these cars, the weight of them was just a whole lot more than what they are now. They're made out of better metal. They drive those big old cars out onto that ice, and they'd be froze so thick that they'd just drive and do donuts out on that ice on top of that river. Used to ride my bicycle out on that ice on the river. Seemed like a different life, different time. The old schools that I went to are all gone. The little old community that I lived in, there's one old house there, and I don't think anybody lives in it now. It's just sitting there weathering down. All the other houses are gone. The train station's gone. They used to have a cafeteria for the railroad men to eat at. Just everything. Coal mines, timbering. All that seems like to be a thing of the past. It's like a ghost town. And I'm still around. I hope you like this, okay? Till next time.